Welcome to Stack the Game. Since we're completely done looking at the NFC West in our Unstacking the Schedule series, let's recap the division. In fourth place, I have the Arizona Cardinals finishing up at 4-13. The Cardinals are one of the more intriguing football teams heading into this season for many reasons, mainly because this team has considerably more talent than a 4-win football team. The biggest move this offseason that they made was, honestly, addressing the quarterback position. They re-signed Jacoby Brissett, which I do think was the right move to make. Now, there were reports early in the offseason that he wasn't too thrilled about them drafting Carson Beck, and that in turn resulted in contract disputes. But in recent weeks, they came to terms on a new deal. And he's a veteran who brings stability, experience, and leadership to a team that desperately needs consistency. And he's not a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. He does stabilize their floor for them. But the question remains, can he elevate the Cardinals to compete against the elite teams in the NFC? Fortunately, they have weapons to work with. Marvin Harrison Jr. has all the tools to become one of the league's premier wide receivers. Michael Wilson continues to develop into a dependable secondary target. Trey McBride is already one of the league's best tight ends. Adding Kendrick Bourne gives his receiving corps another experienced receiver, and of course Josh Sweat strengthens their defensive front, who in my opinion still desperately needs more pass rushing production. The talent is there for Arizona. The problem is everything else surrounding it. Defensively, they still remain inconsistent, especially in the secondary. Their cornerbacks have shown that they can be exploited by elite passing attacks. Depth across the roster also remains a concern because they're depending on several young players and rookies to contribute immediately. Then there's the running back situation of it all, which honestly leaves me with more questions than it does answers. Jeremiah Love was the best running back from the 2026 NFL draft class, but is this the right fit for both parties? There seemed to be more glaring issues that the Cardinals needed to address outside of running back, which it seemed that they did address when they acquired Tyler Algier before the draft. But with the number 3 overall pick, there were only 2 players who were unavailable for selection, and you selected a running back when you desperately needed help in your defensive front. And you give him $53 million fully guaranteed. The investment suggests that you're going to move forward with him right now, but maybe they're trying to develop him alongside Carson Beck. I'm extremely curious to see how this rotation is going to work out throughout the duration of the season, because on paper, I'm not getting it. Ultimately, Arizona's biggest obstacles aren't just the roster itself, it's kind of being them. And that may sound harsh, but they have to go up against the Rams, Seahawks, and 49ers twice. While this season, though they finished in last place last year in the division, this is the most first place, last place schedule I've ever seen. This schedule is pretty brutal. I do think the Cardinals are headed in the right direction when it's all said and done. I simply don't think they're ready to compete with the rest of the NFC West. In third place, I have the San Francisco 49ers finishing up at 11-6. I wouldn't say this team is difficult to project for next season because they're going to be successful, and that's not a question of if. Not only do they have talent, but they have quality depth, and they have one of the league's best coaching staffs. Kyle Shanahan, get well soon, is still one of the premier head coaches in the league, and when this roster is healthy, San Francisco can compete with pretty much anybody. But that's where my concerns begin. San Francisco is entering the season as one of the league's most banged up teams already. Ricky Pearsall has already been ruled out for the season. Mike Evans recently missed practice for a nagging injury, and there are several key players on both sides of the football who are questionable for week 1. A slow start for any team due to injuries is something to be concerned about, but especially so when you consider that San Francisco plays their entire division within the first month, and that could potentially put them behind in the NFC West race. I'm also going to be watching Christian McCaffrey because he's still one of the most elite running backs in the game, but after that insane workload that he had last season, you have to wonder whether or not attrition is going to set in at some point over the course of the 17-game schedule. On the bright side, I do think the front office did a pretty good job of adding talent this offseason. Now, they just need to do a good job of letting go of talent this offseason. It's time to release Brandon Ayuk. Free that man and free yourself. Mike Evans gives Brock Purdy another elite receiving option. Christian Kirk adds versatility to the passing attack. Deebo Samuel returns to the organization, and also Diggy Zua strengthens the defensive front. These additions certainly raise the ceiling of this team, but an area of improvement that I still like to see is takeaway generation. Over the last 2 seasons, San Francisco has struggled to consistently create interceptions, and against elite NFC quarterbacks, that could be the difference between winning playoff games and going home early. Their schedule is manageable enough that if San Francisco can get healthy early, they have a realistic chance of competing for the division with their talent. But until they prove they can stay healthy, durability remains their biggest obstacle. At number 2, I have the defending Super Bowl champions, the Seattle Seahawks, finishing up at 14-3. Seattle enters the season in a pretty unique position because yes, they did lose several important contributors this offseason. However, they did retain the overwhelming majority of a roster that did win a championship. The biggest losses come in the backfield. Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL in the divisional game against San Francisco, ending his season before this one could even begin. And Kenneth Walker III, he's now in Kansas City. As a result, the Seahawks drafted Jadarian Price, who is stepping into an enormous role immediately. Replacing that level of production won't be easy for him. Offensively, my biggest concern is not Sam Darnold. I believe he continues to prove himself. But it is the scheme though, because you did lose Clint Kubiak as well, and now you have Brian Fleury coming in as a new OC, and I'm interested to see how this offense changes. I do expect for Seattle to continue to attack vertically. However, I'm thinking there might be a greater emphasis on creating easier throws, maybe a bit more pre-snap motion, and more ways to maximize Sam Darnold's efficiency rather than asking him to simply carry this offense week after week. Another area which I have questions is finding consistent production outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba. DK Metcalf set the franchise receiving record back in 2020 with 1,303 receiving yards, and last year JSN was phenomenal. He shattered that record with 1,793 himself. So he's continuing to establish himself as one of the league's best receivers, but Seattle cannot become overly dependent on one player. Cooper Kupp is going to have to provide veteran reliability. Rashid Shaheed is going to have to continue to stretch defenses vertically, and literally anybody else in this receiving group is going to have to emerge as a reliable option, because no other Seahawks receiver recorded more than 600 yards last year, and that's not good for one player to surpass everyone else on the team by 1,200 yards. Defensively, I have very few concerns when it comes to the Seahawks. This is one of the 2 best defenses in football, and it starts with an outstanding defensive front who can dominate the line of scrimmage against any opponent. Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy II, and DeMarcus Lawrence consistently generate pressure. Then you have Ernest Jones IV, who anchors the linebacker group, and behind them, Devin Witherspoon headlines one of the NFC's most talented secondaries. So if this offense can adjust under Brian Fleury, then Seattle has a legitimate chance of defending their championship. And winning the NFC West, I have the Los Angeles Rams finishing up at 15-2. Simply put, this is the most talented roster in football, in my opinion. You could argue that they have the best defensive front, the most explosive offense, and the fewest weaknesses of any team entering the season. Offensively, everything starts with Matthew Stafford. He's surrounded by an outstanding supporting cast featuring Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Kyron Williams. But an area that definitely deserves much more attention is this tight end room. Tyler Higbee is still one of Matthew Stafford's most reliable targets over the middle. Kobe Parkinson gives his offense another dependable option with excellent size, and Terrence Ferguson brings athleticism and versatility that Sean McVay could definitely use to create favorable matchups coming out of different personnel groupings. So this position group definitely makes this offense a bit more dangerous. Defensively, the best offseason move was, of course, adding Myles Garrett. I mean, he completely transforms an already dangerous pass rush into arguably the NFL's most dangerous defensive front. His presence alone creates more one-on-one opportunities for everybody else. It forces offense to dedicate more attention and protection, and it simply makes every level of the Rams defense a lot better. Despite projecting them to finish around 15-2, I do not think this team is unbeatable. I would not be surprised if they finish somewhere around 12-5, 13-4, because I do have concerns with the Rams. Can this offensive line consistently protect Matthew Stafford throughout a full season? How healthy can he be throughout the course of this upcoming season? Who can consistently step up at receiver behind Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams if one of them misses time? And my biggest concern is situational football. There are moments where Sean McVay gets away from the run game way too early, and it puts unnecessary pressure on Matthew Stafford and the passing game, and it puts them in difficult fourth down situations. Play calling is a huge factor in situational management, and sometimes that could be the difference between simply winning a playoff game and winning a Super Bowl. There was no reason for the Rams to barely have beaten the Panthers in the wild card game when they were up by 14 in the first quarter, and ultimately that's kind of what cost them the NFC Championship game as well. Despite these concerns, though, I completely understand why most people have the Rams winning the NFC West, coming out of the NFC, and even winning Super Bowl 61. Overall, when it is all said and done, I think the NFC West will remain one of the deepest divisions in football. Honestly, the only division that rivals the West to me is the NFC North. I think Arizona has much more talent than their record suggests. However, they're still searching for consistency and an identity. San Francisco should still be one of the most dangerous teams in the NFC, but their championship hopes would depend on if they can stay healthy. Seattle should have every opportunity to defend their Super Bowl championship, but replacing running back production and trying to adjust to a completely new offensive system could pose as a challenge. And as far as the Rams go, to me, this is the most complete team in football. They have elite weapons on both sides of the ball and the best coaching staff in the league. On top of that, they have very few weaknesses, and that's why I have them winning the NFC West. But as you see here, the margin is very thin. That wraps it up for this recap. Now it's your turn. I want to hear from you. Where do you agree or disagree with my projections, and ultimately, who do you have winning the NFC West? That is it, and that is all for this video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate your support. If you are new, feel free to subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, tap the like button and let YouTube know that we are here. While you're at it, tap the notification bell so you don't miss any content rolling out. In the meantime, be sure to check me out on all social media platforms. Thank you again for your support. I'm Stack. This is Stack the Game, and I'll see you next time.